Hi everybody! I'm trying out a new video style today. Some of you who have been here since the beginning of my channel know that one of my big streams of income is Comic Cons. We didn't really get to do any of that last year, but we did have the opportunity to try out some new art styles, so that was kind of our silver lining to a tough year. I wanted to give this video a try because it is combining two things that are very important to me: art and paganism. When I say paganism, I'm using it kind of as a blanket term for any non-Abrahamic religions. I don't want to get into too much nitty-gritty on that stuff. It's just, like I said, being used as a blanket term. Don't take it too seriously. Today I wanted to show you my painting of Anubis in a new style I'm trying out. It's kind of like a cutesy, cuddly, sort of plushy looking style. And I wanted to also give you a little insight into him because he's a really interesting god. Anubis is actually called something closer to Anpu. Anubis was the Greek name for him, and it's just kind of stuck around ever since. Like most pagan gods, there is a basic backstory to Anubis, but there's also a lot of stories that vary depending on who's telling them. So take everything I say with a pinch of salt. Everything I learned about Anubis has been taught to me by world history teachers, museums, and even some Egyptian people on YouTube. YouTube is always such an amazing resource, and there's so much good information if you just know where to look. Anubis was the child of Nephthys, Osiris, and Set in the New Kingdom, which is kind of the more recent era. I mean, as recent as it can be to us now, but things were a little bit different in the past. During the Old Kingdom, it was actually thought that he came directly from Ra, which would make him an incredibly powerful deity. The idea of Ra essentially being his father is also interesting because Ra is a sun god, so in a way you could think of him as light itself, whereas Anubis is usually in the Duat assisting souls, so he's often in the dark, so they're almost contrary in that way. Speaking of the afterlife, Anubis lives in the Duat with Osiris, Thoth, Horus, Hathor, Ma'at, and a variety of monsters. Unfortunately, all of these gods have gained a slightly sinister reputation over time because many modern people misunderstand the pagan underworlds. In most pagan religions, the underworld is not actually evil or scary, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the Christian idea of hell or eternal suffering. It's literally just the place you go when you die. Beyond that, each religion had its own set of rules as to whether or not your soul was judged and where you went after that. But yeah, the underworld is essentially just where everyone's souls just kind of chill together. Anubis was probably the most important afterlife god because he was there with you from the very beginning all the way to the end. He was very involved in the mummification process and preparing the body for burial. Once the soul got to the Duat, which was just another name for their underworld, they would have to travel a little bit past some monsters and such. It's kind of a long story, until they arrived at the Hall of Two Truths. This is where the soul would be judged, so it would determine whether they simply continued their life as usual in the afterlife forever, or if their soul would be destroyed. Ma'at would offer up one of her feathers for Anubis to weigh against the soul's heart. If their heart weighed more than the feather, it would be eaten by a creature called Amit, and that person would essentially cease to be, which is extremely terrifying. If both items weighed the same amount, the soul would be ushered to the afterlife, where, as I mentioned before, their life would essentially just carry on as usual, only it would last forever this time. So if you were a farmer when you were alive, you're a farmer forever, basically. So I guess depending on how you look at it, could be considered something good or bad. I chose my Anubis's colors very deliberately. He's usually depicted as having black skin or fur because black was seen as a mark of good fortune and rebirth, since it was very similar in color to their soil, and it also was a strong symbol for death, which makes sense for him for the obvious reasons. I also wanted to give him the signature gold color you see on a lot of Egyptian gods because it was seen as being indestructible, just like the gods. They could be temporarily displaced, so to speak, but they never experienced a final death. They always came back somehow, so usually the gods were depicted with gold skin. I also added a lot of green to him because in ancient Egypt, green was a symbol of new life. I thought it would be nice to give him that since he's sort of giving new life to the souls who enter the Duat. He's helping them to cross over into eternal life, so that color made sense. And last but not least, I gave him splashes of dark blue and white. White stood for purity, and it was another one that you usually saw in paintings of gods, but it also carried a similar symbolism to gold, and dark blue stood for the color of the heavens or the realm of the gods, so again, just made sense. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something today. If this is a style of video that you'd like to see more of in the future, please leave a like and subscribe. I'll be checking the likes to decide whether or not it's worth my time and effort to keep making more videos like this. And as always, do something that makes you happy today, no matter what anyone else thinks about it, and I'll see all of you in the next video. Bye-bye.